Well, we'll get started here. Glad you guys have stuck through to week 5, and we've heard a lot of good things about sort of people's experience with this book, and also struggles and wrestling with things and wrestling with themes or questions or whatever it might be. So I wanted to start off first with a question, just kind of a overall reflection question about what you have kind of gained from this study together and reading Elizabeth's book. So the first question I wanted to ask us is, over these past 4 weeks, how has your understanding of the Christian faith deepened or expanded in light of the queer virtues that Liz Edmond talks about in this book, or explores? Feel free to just speak out. No hand raising needed necessary.
Well, I would say my understanding of the Christian faith has definitely deepened and expanded. I can't really articulate how, but I started reading this book over the summer, and I would read a paragraph, and then I would spend a half hour meditating on, my thoughts would be going all kinds of directions because it generated so many ideas and thoughts. And I honestly, the reading for today, I read through it, but I haven't absorbed, I think, even 5% of what I really want to get out of it, just because I have to keep reading it over and over again because there's so much depth there. So I'm very appreciative that we did this study. So that's my comment about it.
Thanks, Sharon. Anyone else?
I could echo some of what Sharon said, especially about needing to reread. I think, and it's not exactly answering your question, but the way this is written, her language is about, I feel like I'm at a 101 level and she's at a 401 level. But I feel like it challenges me to go back and to reread it. But to answer your question, how is it your understanding of this deepened my faith, expanded it? I sort of look at myself and say, boy, do you have it easy. Boy, do you have it easy. And what are you doing on your easiness? So that it is a challenge to how I share my Christianity. I keep it private, so I don't think I'm a closeted Christian, but I'm wondering how far out I am, so
Yeah.
That's
good. Anybody else? Oh, Liz.
Yeah, I appreciate both of you saying what you said. I totally am in concert and sympathy with what you both said. I would also like to add that the idea of queering the Bible or breaking the binary has been kind of mind-blowing to me. So that was just, I still have trouble getting, I still just think, wow, she's really just changed a lot of the way I look at the Bible in that way. The idea of queering it and realizing that, the Christian faith is, what she's suggesting is really queer people, are experiencing that all the time. And it's just interesting to look at it in their lens. So I appreciate that so much. It's just making me see it in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else?
I guess I'm thinking of it. What drives silence? And if you take the theme, and for me it was a theme, I don't know, maybe not for anybody else, but if you take the theme of, and it goes back to the earlier comments, but what causes you to lack the confidence to speak? Sometimes it's external, sometimes it's internal, but I think the internal comes out of the external. So if you think about, for me, it's evangelism. If you're talking about being a Christian, I guess the Christian term we call that is evangelism. And how does the process of thinking about outing yourself ally with evangelizing in the purest sense? And I think, Christianity's been driven underground by evangelical extremists. And how do you take your own voice? How do you, in the case of Christianity, how do you take back your voice? And how does owning your voice, no matter what you are, how does that inform taking back your voice in the case of being an out Christian?
Yeah, and there's a lot, one of the reasons we decided to do this book is there's a lot of books and there's been conversations over the years of like, it is an apologetics for a theology of queerness or inclusion of the LGBTQ community in Christian theology or Christian faith. So it's always been like we're having to argue for our existence or our acceptance into this community. And now what I particularly loved about this book was that it's not making that argument. It's not like we're having to fight for it. It's like, okay, we're here and now we're gonna do this and we're gonna live into it, and finding a voice of faith and theology that isn't silent, that isn't I'm gonna not say too much because I don't want to get into this debate of is it right or wrong, or am I accepted or am I on the outside. She and other people, there's other writers, authors, thinkers, theologians, pastors that are sort of now, okay, we've done the whole debate thing, we're moving forward and we're going to go forward boldly in whatever that particularly looks like for us.
I think that's driven by the stereotype that's foisted, is the only word I'm thinking of, on all of us by the evangelical radicals who've made the stereotype be, if you're a Christian, you're a whack job. And, there's whack jobs in every sector of everything. But you think about, one of my guilty pleasures is radio classics on satellite radio. And some of them that I occasionally trip across, it's how stereotypes were born. I mean, they are so bad in terms of labeling women and persons of color. I mean, it's Native Americans, it's like staggering. But if you were a non-Christian, if you were a Jew in the 50s, you were a pariah in all of those media expressions. So I think, fast forward to now, Jews are in more danger than they've ever been in this country. And how did we not make any progress? Because we have the radical elements that are dominating, and none of us are standing up for that. I shouldn't say that, because obviously a lot of us are, but
sure, yeah.
But it's just radical terrorism that we justified being Christian. Jesus did not die for us to kill each other. I'm convinced of that.
Yeah, and I can't remember if she mentions this at all. And if she does, she didn't spend too much time on it. But we, certain parts of Christianity, specifically in America, are very much steeped in a whiteness, a patriarchal culture, and have lost a sense of the truth. Or even when it comes to Christianity, like the homeless non-white Jew who was killed on a cross that we worship and follow.
If you allege Jesus was not white, that gets you in trouble.
Yeah.
The man couldn't have been white.
Yeah. There's definitely there's some things that just people even thinking just basic, well, he lived in the Middle East somewhere, that's white, and whiteness didn't even like exist when he was alive. But yeah, so that's wonderful reflections. Wonderful. Just wanted to make sure we got a chance to think about sort of the past 5 weeks. Let me close and open us in a prayer, and then we'll move forward. So let's pray together. Holy One, you call us to the margins, where you promise to heal what is broken in us. Help us to be with you in this scandalous place. Give us courage to receive your scandalous hospitality and offer it to others and find healing together. Amen. I want to quickly, I think we have time for this. I want to quickly do a practice of, I don't know if this is querying scripture or noticing how, just simply how Jesus ruptures binaries in his life. We talked about this at the very beginning, so I'm kind of trying to bookend this a little bit for us. But this is a story at the beginning of Luke where Jesus is kind of announcing his intentions for his ministry. I'm going to read this, and then I'm just going to simply ask you, where do you notice Jesus rupturing binaries? This is one, I'm actually not even going to say where it's from. It's in one of the Gospels. Jesus went to Nazareth, where he had been raised. On the Sabbath, he went to the synagogue as he normally did and stood up to read. The synagogue assistant gave him the scroll from the prophet Isaiah. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me. He has sent me to preach good news to the poor, to proclaim release to the prisoners and recovery of sight to the blind, to liberate the oppressed and proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." He rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the synagogue assistant, and sat down. Every eye in the synagogue was fixed on him. He began to explain to them, "Today, this scripture is fulfilled just as you heard it." Everyone was raving about Jesus. So impressed were they by the gracious words flowing from his lips. They said, "This is Joseph's son, isn't it?" Then Jesus said to them, "Undoubtedly, you will quote this saying to me, 'Doctor, heal yourself. Do here in your hometown what we've heard you did in Capernaum.'" He said, "I assure you that no prophet is welcome in the prophet's hometown. And I can assure you that there were many widows in Israel during Elijah's time when it didn't rain for 3.5 years and there was a great food shortage in the land. Yet Elijah was sent to none of them, but only a widow in the city of Zarephath in the region of Sidon. There were also many persons with skin diseases in Israel during the time of the prophet Elisha, but none of them were cleansed. Instead, Naaman the Syrian was cleansed." When they heard this, everyone in the synagogue was filled with anger. They rose up and ran him out of town. They led him to the crest of the hill on which their town had been built so that they could throw him off the cliff. But he passed by through the crowd and went on his way. So this might be a familiar story, but where do you see Jesus rupturing binaries in that story?
The chosen aren't the chosen.
Mm-hmm. Say more.
Well, when he gives the example of who's healed and who's fed, and I mean, the ones who deserved it aren't the ones who got it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Those who were considered insiders, or the people of God, which we would also be careful not to read this as like the Jews, but that God healed those who were considered not part of the tribe of Israel. So yeah, nobody in the tribe of Israel was healed except but someone who was a Syrian, Naaman the Syrian, and the widows of I think it was from Sidon were fed and were healed. So how is Jesus using that to kind of talk about the binaries he's going to rupture? This is the beginning of his ministry. So what's he kind of hinting at?
I think he's hinting at there are actually no chosen. Everybody's chosen, which can't be right, because obviously there are. I mean, I that to me is the bigger message, that everybody is equal in God's eyes, even the ones who are more equal than others in their own eyes.
Yeah, he comes to say, I come to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor, which we might read that as like, not just for you who think you're in, but I'm coming to proclaim it for everybody. I'm coming to proclaim it for the ones you thought it wasn't for, who God did not favor or had fallen out of favor with God. Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to give us a chance to read scripture through that lens a little bit. Let's watch this video, the video for this week from Liz. Hold on just a second. Not sure why this is. Oh, you know what? Hold on just a second. No, that's right.
We can hear it. We were able to hear it.
Oh, you guys were? Okay. I don't think we could hear it for.
Oh, okay. So, you know what, Chris? Something audio in your room then.
Yeah.
Is it the,
Here it comes.
The Oxford English Dictionary defines scandal as an action or event causing general public outrage. When you Google it, you get these synonyms: outrageous wrongdoing, immoral behavior, shocking incident. Queer people know a lot about scandal and the shame it breeds. We have long been cast as undignified, as morally outrageous. So hey, we've claimed the turf. You need me to be a scandal for your impoverished worldview? Well, honey, so be it. Michael Warner says that when queer people embrace scandal, we create an ethical vision for ourselves. The rule, he says, is this: get over yourself, put a wig on before you judge, and the corollary is that you stand to learn the most from the people you think are beneath you. You know who preached a message just like this? Jesus. Jesus was scandalous on purpose. He lived in an occupied country. His people felt powerless, and he needed them to see just how powerful they and their God really were. Everything about Christianity is scandalous. God shows up as a defenseless baby? That's just wrong. Rome's most shameful instrument of torture becomes a mechanism for salvation? Oh, come on! The entire thrust of the Christian message is supposed to make our eyes open as wide as they can go as we stammer, but that's not the way things are supposed to be. Both queers and Christians are called to look scandal in the eye and deny its power to control us. This is how we break the shackles of whatever shame we have known. This is how we affirm the dignity of every human being. This is one of the most important ways that we participate in building a better world for all of us. Amen.
So let's see. Do I have? No, not yet. So what image or idea struck you in that quick video, and why did it strike you? Anything she said or the image that she kind of gave? Yeah.
Yeah, that everybody has value, that everybody is important, certainly in God's eyes. And I think generally in society, people think of doctor, lawyer, engineer, etc., as important and valuable. And whatever you determine as lesser than that, not as valuable. And we certainly learned during COVID, the essential workers were the ones that had more value in our lives at the time than the others. So I really resonate with anything where, not that we're necessarily all equal, but in God's eyes, we definitely are equal. And it is, of course, for all of us to feel that value.
Yeah.
Not just that we value other people, but that we value ourselves.
Yeah, that we
as well.
internalize that ourselves. Yeah.
I like how she talks about Christianity is scandalous. I think that's just a really interesting way to, phrase that. And also that queer people, totally understand that because, they're living in scandal, right? Because of what society says they should or shouldn't be doing. So I love how she makes that connection, that they inherently understand, scandals and tying that into Christianity.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was thinking, by us reading this book in church and doing it, we're kind of scandalous. You know?
Sure.
Like for the pastors to actually do this for us and for us to support. So, you know, we're kind of scandalous a little bit. You know?
Sure.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
it's good. It's good discussion. So.
Yeah.
I think in one class, Rafi, you said this book would be banned.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have. What struck me in what she just read was that a method of torture is our salvation.
Mhm.
Yes, that's chilling.
Yeah.
Chilling.
And that's there's another theologian who actually died a few years ago named James Cohn, who wrote a whole book on the cross as this symbol of salvation, this what he called the terrible beauty of the cross. He connects to the lynching tree, as we don't always think about it, but talks about, this ugly, torturous, violent thing, which we should not lose. Like the cross is not a good thing. Like crosses are not good, but somehow God transforms that into something of beauty. Mysteriously, and it's hard for us to rationalize that, but that's sort of a big part of the Christian message, is God's able to bring that that out of that beauty out of ugliness.
It reminds me, when my children were younger, they said, "What's good about Good Friday?"
Mm.
You know, and how could that be good?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
Easter's coming, Sunday's coming, you know, but
Right.
Friday's hard.
Yeah.
I can still
Absolutely.
hear them saying that.
Yeah.
It's something about the cross is the equality of need. We are forced to look at this symbol and to realize that is for each of us.
Mhm.
It wasn't, and because it was a political thing, it wasn't just the Jews. It's all of us. It's all of us that need to look at the cross and understand the cross and what he did on the cross for us.
Mhm.
I think that's what drew me back into an organized location, was that you don't need it I don't need it any more than you need it. We all need what he's come to give us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to get into some of these book excerpts for a little bit, and we'll break off into a couple groups. You know, maybe like split here and have 3 and 3, and then have the 3 of you. Are you still with us, Anne?
Yes, I am. I had
Okay.
trouble turning the mute off. Yeah,
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
I'm
split
here.
the-
No,
I'll
I'm
split
here.
I'll split the 3 of you up on Zoom into your own breakout room. But before we do that, I'll read through all 3 of these quotes, because I'm going to give each group a different quote, but I want everybody to have a chance to hear each one. So as you're talking, maybe you're able to understand what people have been talking about. But there's 3 quotes, and then we'll break off. I'll give you some questions to talk about together. So the first one here, she writes, "The facts of queer life demand a lived response of high moral caliber. Some queer friends gave me pushback to this idea. They feared that the words high moral caliber could be construed as an appeal to respectability, and they anticipated that many self-identified queers would resist such a call. I would resist such a call. The notion of respectability is itself a trap. It is a trap because our scandalous nature and our courage in confronting convention is at the heart of what we bring to larger society that is of such value. This is a huge ethical import." Before I go to the next 2 quotes, would someone, Liz, do you have your book on you?
Yes. Yes.
Could you find that quote in your book? Because that's the quote I'm going to give you guys on Zoom.
Yes, I have it. I have it.
Just so you guys are able to have a copy of it and read it, because I have printed copies.
Okay, sure.
The next quote here, she writes, Jesus has just told the disciples that he is heading for Jerusalem, where he's going to suffer and be killed. Peter wigs out. The text said that Peter pulls Jesus aside and begins to rebuke him. Can you imagine rebuking Jesus? Peter says, God forbid it, Lord, this must never happen to you. Does Jesus place his hand compassionately on Jesus' shoulder to help him process this difficult truth? No. Jesus is pissed. He assaults Peter with perhaps the most withering statement in the entire gospel. Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. In all of Christian scripture, this is the only time when the word scandalon is used to refer to an individual person. And here's something else. This little drama unfolds just 2 verses after the scene in which Jesus renames Peter in a famous wordplay, makes Peter the founder of his church on earth. He says, I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. 1 minute, Jesus is identifying Peter as the guy who is going to lead his movement on earth. The next minute, Peter goes all establishment and begins reprimanding Jesus for the scandal of his faith. Jesus is astonished. You are going to be scandalized by me? Jesus understands how powerfully human society is drawn to safety, to respectability. He sees clearly that the church's need to be respectable, to be safe, will lead it inexorably to struggle with the scandal he's about to become. This is a cautionary tale extraordinaire for those with religious authority and Mother Church specifically. You are not above being scandalized by the very message you proclaim. Beware just how easily you can become a tool of Satan, a scandal to Jesus himself, even as you stand there jangling those keys to heaven. Last quote. Oh. Eschatology, she's talking about here. Eschatology speaks of our destiny and our destination. Oh, there we go. How do we know where we are going if we have given up dreaming about what it will be like when we get there? Eschatology is deeply embedded in early church understandings of what Christianity is all about. It is woven through our scripture, and as Stuart suggests, it has practical impact on the work that we do. Revealing both our understanding of ourselves and our dreams, eschatology should inform our decisions about the actions we take that are designed to make the world a better place, a place that somehow manifests God's realm on earth. We have been talking about relationship between theology and ethics. We have observed that theology and ethics work together, that in a sense they make each other possible. Eschatology asks us foundational questions about why we do justice work at all. Are we building a better world simply to demonstrate our faith because Jesus told us to do so? Or does something in all that action actually accomplish something that is important to God and to us? To put it another way, are we simply walking this path, or are we paving it? So I'll break you up in a moment here, but these are the questions, again, I want you to consider. And you probably won't get through all of these, but maybe pick 2, maybe 3. So what draws you to this quote? What do you understand it to mean, or what did you learn from it? How does it articulate something new, or like we said at the beginning, expand your understanding of living out the Christian faith? How does it challenge you? How would you like to challenge it? And if Liz were right here, what would you ask her about this particular quote? So split right there, 3 and 3. And I will give you guys the first quote. Print a bunch. I wouldn't know how many people will be here. Here's the second quote. And I'll give you all the third. You can just, I printed out 10 each, so you're going to have extra. And then you guys on the screen, I'm going to have you do the shortest quote here, this first one. So Liz, you found it in your book? Mm-hmm. Okay. So let me break you guys out.
And I got it too.
You got 2.
Can
Okay,
you put
perfect.
the questions back up there, please, Chris?
Yeah, if I can find my clicker.
Yeah, I mean,
Whoops.
That's why I
can't do
Yes,
much.
did it, Robbie.
Thank you.
I thought I passed two.
So let me
No, no worries.
Two.
guys into
That's a good word for me today.
settings.
Is scandalum really a word?
Yeah, so it's a Greek word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Participants.
Participants.
Please.
Well, I think I'd like
And where's the definition of it? What is the definition of it?
Are we simply walking this path or are we paving?
Nope, that's not it.
Yeah, I had to read and read. Her writing is amazing.
I can't create breakout rooms. I'm not sure why this isn't working.
Are you a host, Chris? You have to be a host or a co-host to do that.
Yeah, so that might be the issue.
There's no host. There's no
Yeah.
host in this.
There has to be a host.
No. Well, Lynn might be the host.
She might be the host, and it might be
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really
No,
bizarre.
if you look at the participants, there's no host.
Yes, right.
Site. Yeah, there's no one's labeled as.
Do you want me to send her another text? She's probably. Want me to send her another
Oh wait,
text?
hold on. Claim host.
Oh, claim host. Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
Oh.
wait. Oh, host key.
Oh. Haha.
That's another. If you guys want to keep going, you guys can keep going.
Yeah.
My apologies, you all.
That's okay. We can think about these questions individually too, Anne and Sharon.
Closeness to Christ that'll,
Absolutely.
confront
It's a
them.
very dense paragraph to.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most
Anne, I hope you feel better.
here.
Oh, I'm on this is day 5.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't even need that medicine.
Side, not this.
Oh,
The
good.
Spiritual godly side.
Yeah.
That really struck me as. Yeah.
I got very lucky. Bad head cold.
That faith and just.
I had it my family and I had it in May.
Did you?
My husband and I were out for like weeks with a really bad cough. That was the most annoying part.
Yeah.
But my girls were like, no big deal. It was like a day they were fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm about, I don't know, 75%.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna go do any exercises, but yeah, I'm better. A lot better. Like I say, it was a bad head cold.
Mhm.
Annoying. Yes. Did Chris go find Lynn?
No, he's there.
Still
Oh,
here.
okay.
I'm trying to text her, but she's not answering.
Yeah, she's probably in the middle of worship.
Yep. Oh, got it. She just responded.
Great. She's terrific. She is really.
651.
Yeah.
Come on.
So it says you are scandalized by the.
264 651.
The question here, are we really
Aha, there we go.
simply
All right.
demonstrate our faith?
Now I'm the host.
Yay.
Ta-da. You have a lot of experience with this, huh, Liz?
Well,
At Westchester?
yeah, I just know just from, being with students in Zoom, I've learned these things the hard way because I know what works, what doesn't.
More. But there's still no option to do breakout rooms.
It says, it clearly,
You
it says clearly that the churches need to be respectful.
camera security using chat.
To struggle.
No.
So then the mother church.
Or-
In the rules, I guess.
be the collective.
Say that to Peter. You were not about the incident.
Because as an individual, I think at times you're the favor and at times you're.
Yeah, I can't, for whatever reason, I cannot create, even as it's like it's not set up. There's no.
Yeah.
Option. No option.
Well,
Showing up.
no, that's not what I
By
wanted.
showing up,
Next minute, Peter.
perhaps you see this.
Yeah, and you could be doing either one.
I think for me.
Chris, if the three of us talk, will that be distracting to the room?
It's pretty loud, and I haven't figured out
Okay.
volume now. Let me see. There's gotta be a way to like mute from here. Let me see. Hold on.
The goal is I have a line that I also create the groups. And you don't want to do someplace. Then it's God's realm. It's like it's hard. God, Jesus.
Let me see. What time is it?
Peter.
Okay. Here's what I'm gonna have you guys do. Look at the quote yourself and just think about some of those questions to yourself and how you answer. When we get back together, we'll all share and talk. The rest of the time I don't have any other plan to do breakout rooms the rest of the time. So we'll be all together. And again, my apologies. That was not as smooth as I was hoping it to be.
Could you do us a favor and put the questions back up, Chris?
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
How do we know where we're going if we've given up thinking about what it would be like when we get there? I guess part of me thinks part of the problem we're just how easy predetermined what we say it's going to be like to hesitate instead of being open to what it's going to be. So I wonder if that sends you down the rabbit hole. I mean, is that what helps create stereotypes? Because we know it's going to look like this.
Church is.
I don't know. That's the question I would be asking the author if she were here.
How do we know where we're going?
Then that's not
What's wrong? Not
saying that predetermined scandal is that
that's what has gotten us into such trouble.
every human being.
Well, it's interesting. My
That we're all dead on the cross.
he was the one that
Save us.
you know, all come back and said, I'm gay. I mean, this is the younger son. We lived in New York, and
Gonna take like 2 or 3 more minutes to chat, and then we'll come back together.
First, Christ came to the.
only my one daughter said to me, Mom, you listen to St. Children's. How did you not know? All through high school. I mean,
As if that's it.
well, I thought, well, that's
Jesus, it's hot.
theater. But anyway, so my husband and I
So
did have to open our eyes and our hearts.
church thinks that
Be
it's
real.
just a blessing to
When we would grow here,
meet this.
and he lived in Chelsea.
The standards.
Which is, I guess, church, a gay community, but it's not all. But walking around in the world, and friends, Stephen, hi, how are you? We'll hug and kiss. Just as every day as
It's hard to stand up
for sure, and what you're going to be. And I saw that as
other people saying,
it's that
the
kind of.
Bible says, or whatever.
And I
Talking.
thought, you know what, this is just good old friends. I mean, good old friends, I had a chance to experience
When you talk about racial prejudice and
how to put it, I really don't.
hide their race.
I was always so
Color, your skin color.
So is it because I had that?
I don't know if we're in the fire, but
It's easier for me that I saw what it could look like.
that's.
I don't know. That's rambling, I feel like, but.
All right, let's gather back together.
That makes any sense.
Us to come, because
I think it comes, I think rambling enough is what gets you. So whatever your next understanding.
Yes,
is supposed to be.
absolutely.
So as we think about these quotes,
And
sorry to interrupt.
we're not done, in case
No,
you're
I
we're not
Well,
ignoring you.
well,
We're
and
just continuing the homework.
Well, and in this part too, I think there's planned like 20 or 30 minutes for this particular section, and because I couldn't get you guys in a Zoom room, that felt like too long to make you just sit there and watch us and wait. And I know we got started a little bit late too, but yeah, and for some of these, even me reading some of these, I could just go on and on and on and just like, take rabbit trails. So it would be curious just to hear from whether, individuals on Zoom or either of these two groups, answer your answer to any or a couple of these particular questions, what you read.
I was thinking for us, we were thinking about the first quote. The Reverend Liz says that there's a huge paradox between being respectable and scandalous. And, she says it's an ethical paradox of a huge ethical import. And I'm thinking, can't we be both? Can't we be respectable and scandalous? I mean, Jesus certainly was. He was respectable and he was also scandalous. So I think she's suggesting the paradox. So it's an interesting paradox we have to deal with. We can be both respectable and scandalous at the same time, I'm assuming. So that's what I would ask her. Can't we be both? Jesus did both.
Anyone else?
We had, I don't know which question we had. We had the one with Peter and Jesus talking. And we were, one of the things that came up was, he was telling Peter that he's going to be scandalous by the way that he's acting at that time. Right. And I think what we came down to with our small group here, even though we were interrupted, that, Jesus died on the cross for all of us, not just, for those good Christians or the white people or whatever, but for all of us, your skin color, we're all you'll get that, love and that unconditional. So,
yeah.
Sound right, Jen?
Yeah. Anyone else?
My favorite question is always the last one, anytime that's part of the discussion. And I got stuck on the second sentence. How do we know where we're going if we've given up dreaming about what it will be like when we get there? I would ask her, is dreaming what it would be like when we get there what's caused us to become so biased?
So in terms of like, we've gotten maybe too like stuck dreaming.
I was thinking more of how we've drawn silos and boundaries. As sects, we've decided we are right. We know what it's going to be like when we get there. And anybody who doesn't agree with that is not chosen, not invited on the trip. They're not even allowed to walk the path, let alone pave the path.
Yeah. Gotcha. So our dreams are still captured. Like we might dream about what the future looks like, but they're really chained to those binaries of like, we're in, they're out, this person, not that person.
Which is why I'd want to ask her, what's wrong with knowing, with not dreaming about what it will be like?
And I would add to that, so eschatology is like sort of wide, what is our destiny and our destination? And anybody would have a different and unique answer. Even among Christianity, like Christians would have different answers, different theological ideas. So you'd have to say, okay, what do you think your destiny is? And I'd wonder, well, maybe we have to then judge like that particular destiny or image that we have and say, well, does that look like Jesus, or does that look like the liberate, when Jesus talked about liberating the oppressed, the poor, giving sight to the blind, the year of the Lord's favor? Does that destiny look like that, or does it look like something made in our own image?
I would say that if the opposite, if we looked ahead and at heaven and what we imagine heaven to be, it would be, for me, it would be all inclusive. There wouldn't be biases.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look more at that more perfect picture than living in the reality that we have.
Yeah. I think in my opinion, the best image of that is like, or word for that is beloved community, which doesn't necessarily come out of here. It comes more out of like the civil rights movement of, Dr. King and John Lewis and all those sort of civil rights movers. But yeah, that this beloved community, it's not even that like the oppressed now become the futures, like they become in charge and oppress the others, but it's how do the oppressed get free, but also how do those with authority or oppressors also find a different kind of freedom, like a freedom from having to control or having to be on top, or that we can be together, is the destiny and the dream.
And she gave us an imagery too, when she talked about hospitality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how we, when we're in that environment, we know how much we love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we love being together within family. That's what everyone on earth, I think, is looking for, is that acceptance and that joy that you feel when you feel safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I wasn't able to be here last week, so I don't know if this was raised last week, but the closing hymn last Sunday was I
am a child of God.
I am a child of God. No matter what people say about me or think about me, nothing can separate. So that to me is the best thing, just the best thing, and how does it happen that everybody feels that way? I don't have that answer, but I know in my heart, I know that's the answer, that no matter what, I am a child of God.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I affirm that in everybody, in my circle and beyond, so that I wasn't able to stay even in the sanctuary last week for the whole thing, but I have sung that song. It's like it won't go out of my head. I won't do it now because I only sing with 80 of my best friends, and it just spoke to me about this course, and this way of opening my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful.
I thought it was a wonderful service last week too, with the confirmands. Just amazing. But
yeah. And finding a way to say, I am a child of God, or I am loved, and so are they.
So are you. Yes.
So are you.
Yes.
Because that can be the danger of like, well, I'm loved, and there can be this strange sort of warping, but also say, okay, I am loved, and so are they. So are you.
Yes, we like Liz would say, we have to consider the self and the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We are loved. I am loved, but so is everyone else. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
go ahead.
When we were picking songs for our reception and for our wedding, there's a song, and I can't now remember who sings it, but there's room at the table for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And the video that goes with that song is so wonderful, because it's every color, it's every size, it's every, and that's what we want. You want it.
Yeah.
And I want it, and that's what I want to give to everybody who comes into my life, everybody who comes into my circle, to say there's room at the table for you too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, let's move forward here. So Reverend Liz talks a little bit about respectability and being sort of a respectable, like respectability having sort of this, the way she writes about it as like this danger of then like sort of being safe and being sort of failing to, as a church, failing to live as Jesus lived and failing to work toward that world beloved community, because we want to make sure everything kind of stays calm and stays in place and doesn't break. So thinking about what it means to be a respectable member of society, what images come to mind? Have you ever found yourself aspiring to be respectable, or have you ever had an opportunity to be respectable and turn it down? And of course, in all that, why? For some depth.
This is Anne.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I got hung up on that word because all I could think about was social norms and what's acceptable. You know, going back to Christianity, it's believing the right things as opposed to having faith, which is one of the things I always come back to. I really liked how Liz interpreted that paragraph because I hadn't quite seen it like that. She got into it deeper than I saw it, which was really helpful. But you know, I mean, me like everybody else has been in these situations where people have called me out for not being quote unquote respectable because I wasn't doing what they thought I should be doing or what I was, you know, acting or being. You know, it starts with your parents as teenagers, but you know, society does it to us too, and it's not what Jesus would do. You know, and it may sound like a simplistic, but at least interpretation, but at least it get conversation started.
Well, I was thinking, I can think of it in a professional way. You know, with my profession, I strive to be I strive to be a respected colleague in my profession. You know, so people, I guess, respect my work. They read my research. They read my literature, whatever. But at the same time, I think I'm also trying to be scandalous because I'm trying to get people to see how to approach different treatment outcomes with our patients in different ways. And oftentimes, I hope I'm respected, but at the same time, a lot of people might say to me, "Oh, what's that? You know, what's Liz talking about now? How is she trying to change?" You know, sometimes I think I also bring scandal, and I try to get people to think in different ways. So it's interesting to kind of think about it that way and try to be both.
Yeah.
And I think it's according to what Reverend Liz is saying. I guess that's what we should strive to be, is to be respectable and scandalous.
Yeah, and if
Could we be gain respectability and when we're being scandalous, in other words, getting people to think differently or see like the proverbial handle on the coffee cup.
Yeah.
See something that we didn't like. That other quote from that chapter about we learn most from the people that have less or you know, or perceived by as less.
learning from those who we consider beneath us.
Yeah, that was my favorite chapter, maybe quote in the whole book. It was really good. Yeah.
Well, and and I think of respectability in terms of queer virtue and in terms of, how queer people have been seen as scandalous. The first thing that comes to mind is pride parades. And if there's anything anybody ever comes to me with about like scandal, it usually has something to do with how bright and how out there and how forceful and how upfront queer people sometimes are, especially around Pride, wearing all kinds of colors, wearing clothing that maybe would not be considered respectable, and how we, people said, well, I'd be fine with it if people would, like, people who go to Pride parades or attend Pride parades wouldn't be so in your face, or wouldn't wear such bright colors, or say such, outrageous things. And there's this sense of, if they were more respectable, I could respect them. And so I think about it as, who's defining respectability? If it's the people who have the most authority in a community or a society, or who, are considered on top or have the most cultural, economic, political, religious power, then respectability there is something that's squelching belovedness. It's squelching. It's sticking to those binaries. Like, if you could just stay this way, we'd be fine. Yeah, if you could stay in your place.
If you would just look like me,
right,
we'd be good with you.
Right.
I think you have a prime example of what happened in Westchester with the parade. It seemed like they were fine with the parade, but when it said there was going to be two
drag
singers, it was like, that crossed over a border.
Yeah.
I was also thinking about the church that lost half its members when Cornerstone made a statement. The ones who they drew a line. The people who left drew a line and said, this is no longer respectable. So that's kind of a risk. You've just flashed onto risk.
Yeah.
I think the people on the right side of the issue decided respectable had to be open and inclusive, and the ones on the wrong side of respectable, she said, judging those people, left because there wasn't enough room in their hearts for people to be different.
Yeah, I think a great, and this is outside this particular maybe focus, but a great sort of historical document that I think addresses the issue of respectability is Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail. If you've never read that, there's a lot relating to respectability in what especially the white moderate church, it's done. So thinking about, this question, have you ever intentionally done something that challenged what other people thought was right or wrong? Did it put you at risk? Did you regret it? Was there anything you learned from that particular experience?
Yes, no, I'm still figuring it out.
All right, I'm not gonna let you get away with just that, but as much as you're willing to share.
I've already shared with this group, I'm a bisexual woman. I was married to Ellen in this church. Ellen and I split during COVID. She moved back to California. We're now divorced. Would either of us have done that if we thought that's the path we were on? The analogy I use is, we set off on this journey together. The destination didn't wind up being where we thought it would be. Were there people who thought it was wrong? Yeah. Not everybody in our circle of friends, not everyone in our individual circles of friends were supportive. Did it put us at risk? At our age and stage, I think it probably didn't. Do I regret doing it? No. I wouldn't. If I knew then what I knew now, I wouldn't believe it. So I think, do you learn from the experience? Of course. But I think you have to listen to your own heart. I don't know. That's what I mean. I'm still figuring that out.
Yeah.
But
I can answer this as well. And it parallels Robbie's answers, but under a different circumstance. I was raised Roman Catholic, and I stayed Roman Catholic while I lived in my mother's home because that's what my mother expected. And I appreciated my Roman Catholic upbringing. I do not disparage that in any way, but I was mentally not accepting many things. And I made a decision to leave. And it was not, the decision was easy, quite honestly. Delivering the message was another story, you know. And I had one of my sisters call me and said, "Don't tell her, you'll kill her." You know, so just a little guilt. But did it put me at risk? Not really, not really. I mean, I knew I had to step into what I believed. And I happened to join a Presbyterian church. Did I know where my faith was going to go? No, but boy, am I glad. You know, so do I regret it? Absolutely not. And the best thing was my second child was baptized. And in the Catholic faith, when you have your child baptized, that's a big party, you know. So with my first child, it was very subdued, and it was far more like a funeral service than a celebration. And when my second daughter was baptized here at Westminster, not this building, but the other building, Westminster, my parents came. And my mother said afterward, "I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it was a very nice service." And I thought, that is like applauding, you know. So what did I learn from the experience? Go for it. When your heart says go for it, go for it, you know. So.
Yeah.
And I have something sort of related to both of these as well. I was also raised Catholic. And made a decision to divorce my husband 17 years into that marriage. We've absolutely refused to be involved in the annulment process that would have allowed me. Would not do that. And I wrote a lengthy letter to the powers that be that were doing that. Interestingly enough, my ex-husband got that annulment without my participating in it, which is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Speaking of patriarchy.
That's right, yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
And he is not at all, he did it absolutely for his Irish mother. Okay, he is not at all involved in the church, period. We're very good friends. But was that a risk? Not really. I knew what I had to do. I'm not a Catholic anymore, as you can see. I don't regret it, but I can tell you that process was really fascinating. Yeah. And I just bucked it the whole way. I thought, no way, you are not going to tell me this marriage was not valid.
Right.
It was valid.
Right.
We had 2 children. It was blessed by the Pope, for heaven's sake. I have a picture of the Pope. I don't have it anymore, but I mean, it was just so sad to me, that lack of understanding that this can happen. It can happen. It doesn't mean you're less of a Catholic in that case.
So I'll continue along the Catholic line. So I was raised Catholic, and I went to 12 years at the Catholic school, and then I met Joni. And my identity was Catholic, or parish, St. Martin of Tours. All my girlfriends were Catholic, who I grew up with. And meeting Joni, it was, to me, it was the right thing. I, of course, was told it was the wrong thing. Did it put me at risk? Yes, risk of losing friends that I had grown up with. My identity in my community. Do I regret it? Hell no. And what did I learn from the experience? That follow your heart, and your heart will find you the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a like when there's something to say about the convictions of our hearts, and just know, like, yeah, this pushes against all I have been formed in, and maybe what the community I'm a part of. But sometimes it's hard, you know, if we can't shake that, it may be the Spirit pushing us to say, hey, I'm leading you forward. Come meet me. Yeah. Well, moving along, one last question in regards to this quote. She writes, facing down scandal means rupturing binaries that do violence to people, both conceptually and in practical life. Right in line with what queer people comprehend, it means understanding the scandal that you, as a Christian, already are. So in thinking about that, I want you to think about Westminster and think about, I said outreach because I don't have a better term for it, but maybe even community engagement. That, outreach or community engagement opportunities that Westminster provides. Is there anything scandalous about what we provide? Does anything we do disrupt false binaries or upend conventional ideas about power in the world?
Well, I would add that I think we're upending the conventional ideas of power, of binary, of patriarchal. Usually in the Catholic Church in particular, it's always run by men at most levels.
Mm-hmm.
In our church, we have quite the opposite. We have a lead pastor who is a cisgender woman, and we have 2 other associate pastors who are cisgender women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so that's pretty darn cool.
Yeah, I think this is the first time in Westminster's history we've ever had a head of staff who is female.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and the first, I'm a new member, but the first gay marriage was here as well. Isn't that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, Don performed Bob and Glenn's marriage back in 2014.
Yeah.
December 14.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I actually think the scandalous disruption of power will happen in a very public way when Cray-Billy is settled and the church starts talking about affordable housing.
Mm.
Because I think the enemies of affordable housing are already lined up to hate that. And I don't mean inside the walls, I mean outside the walls. And with the strategic plan, instrumental in creating the Westchester coalition that's talking about affordable housing, that's going to be very interesting. Because among the early conversations before COVID was actually for returning citizens affordable housing, which is of course the sanitized term for prisoners who are being released from prison. I think it'll be fascinating. And I mean,
yeah,
were it not for Cray-Billy and COVID, we might already be in the thick of that, but obviously we're not.
Well, and when I think of like a particular sort of label for that binary, I think of like who do we consider a good and bad citizen or desirable and undesirable citizen? As to like, if people, coming out of the prison system or who don't have we have a nice neighborhood across the street, a nice neighborhood across Pleasant Grove.
Yeah.
And you can see, like, driving into Westchester, you can tell the parts of Westchester Borough that are primarily, non-white, and then you get into the more historic areas and they're primarily white. And there's a whole host of reasons for that, but like, I mean, thinking about someone who, who do we consider desirable, and how do we rupture that and say, like, that's not even a good definition of community.
It's interesting though with Westchester, with Eli Cohn developing the former Rubenstein's property, that's not going to be affordable housing. And with Pinckney Hill Commons, that was built by Church Housing and the Melton Center partnership. My Rotary has a core commitment partnership with the Melton Center, and so a lot of people will talk to me about that building where those people are going to live. I'm like, who's going to live in there? Well, they are people with jobs. They are people who are priced out of the market. It's workforce housing. It's not Section 8 HUD. And people just don't get that. If it's got the term affordable, they're convinced it's people who are too lazy to be able to afford good housing. And it's crap. It's just, it's very disappointing. Some of the reasonably bright people who are so uninformed about that. And we have to have room for all that. But I mean, the affordable housing on Church Street that's HUD assisted for elders, nobody's complaining about that being across the street from the farmer's market. That's not people making them feel I can't go shopping for corn in the summer because those people live across the street. It's, but anyway.
Well, and it's an interesting conversation too, because, you know, I mean, since I've been here, Cray-Billy's been, I've heard about, and I still don't completely understand the whole history of it, but, you know, thinking about it, and, you know, you see signs of, you know, protect our way of life, don't develop Cray-Billy. In some sense, I understand that because of the kind of traffic that could create, but also, you know, thinking about other things I've seen, you know, not just at Cray-Billy, you know, don't change our community. We don't want more housing. We want to keep the beauty of our community. And in primarily white communities, white people have a pretty strong voice to say, like, don't put a wind turbine, or don't develop this, or put a pipeline. Like, you can be pretty powerful in that. And then I think about urban Black communities that are developed, that start turning over, and more non-Black people, or people of color, white people move in, and we call that renewal, and we call that it's gentrification, and we say, oh well, that's good because these communities were run down, and they needed help and everything, and yet all that change often goes in without the input of the community. And so that's why you
priced out.
That's why you get priced out. That's why you see highways and train tracks driven straight through communities. And so there's this thing. Well, we have a pretty strong say here, but in those communities where we say, oh, it's good that it's changing, those people might say something different and say, well, this is a community that I have roots in, I have family, and I have connections to, and I was not given a single say in what was done here.
That happened in Atlantic City. I spent 20 years living at the shore, and that happened in Atlantic City. Nobody cared what the community said. They were coming in those casinos. And it, you know, there was one lady, some of you may remember, there was one lady that refused to move. Right. You remember her? And she just stayed. I mean, God bless her.
Yeah. Well, oh, go ahead, Ann.
Yeah, I mean, what we're talking about, and I was trying to figure out how to bring it up, I'm glad other people have, is, systemic racism. Because all this is about, like, gentrification. Oh, we're turning the neighborhood around. And what we're doing is we're saying, we don't want to look at poor people. We don't want to look at people who we don't want to see people who don't look like us or don't share our values or our culture. We want to drive them out. And we'll quote unquote, reclaim the neighborhood. And just like you said, Chris, about running highways through poor neighborhoods. That's really pushing the envelope, and people don't want to hear that because none of us nobody wants to feel guilty. They think that they're improving, quote unquote, improving the community, when in fact what they're doing is making marginalized people more marginalized.
Yeah, and sometimes that's
patting themselves on the back.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing to get over is that we're not always intentional about that, but we are connected, and we can be culpable, even for things we're not trying. It's not always about the intention; it's about what's actually happened, and we gotta kind of take stock of that. And anything scandalous, we're as we're still going with our task force, and Joni's been a part of that for inclusivity. There's still things that we're imagining could be done here at Westminster, a connection to the community that, maybe it would seem like a scandal here for part of our church to go to a Pride Fest and be represented. I don't actually know. I know we've taken leaps and bounds over the last few years, but not every single person at Westminster currently is like 100% on board. I mean, we're a pretty big congregation, so so yeah, there may be things when we think about community connections that someone might say, well, that doesn't seem right. That, like, should we really be representing ourselves or going to support this?
Let me know when.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll take you up on
That's
that.
interesting. I went with the Episcopal Church in Westchester, did a trip to Ireland this June, and I went. And there was a hike. I'm a hiker. There was a hike on Patrick, which I did. 4 of us did out of 11, which of course meant that there were the rest, the 7 didn't. And the little town near Patrick Mountain, and Patrick is where St. Patrick had his epiphany. So it's a very Catholic community. But everybody else went shopping in this little village, and the village it was June. They were having a Pride Fest. And the priest from the Episcopal Church in the borough and all the members that were shopping all marched in the Pride Festival.
Mm.
I thought, I'm like, wow, how cool was that?
Yeah.
But I guess I was actually shocked that, I mean, because it's vacation, you know, but they did.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool.
That was really wonderful.
They also shopped and drank beer, but it's Episcopalian, they do
That's
alcohol.
right. Yeah, they bring alcohol. to their
Irish,
Well, I want to be mindful of our time. I know we're running a few minutes over, so I wanted just to come back around to a quote we actually started this class with, and specifically talking about Christianity as an invitation in the movement. Liz writes, Christianity is an invitation into movement, into change. It may contain moments of stunning simplicity, but it is never simplistic. It is designed to challenge simplistic efforts to grasp, to contain, and to tame God and our experiences of God. Christianity is a path that incessantly leads you to places you've never been before. Like the parables that were the hallmark of Jesus' teachings, if this path doesn't surprise you, it isn't doing its job. I just want to leave us there and say, first, thank you all for joining us in these 5 weeks and taking this journey through this book. I know it was inspiring at times, challenging others, wrestling through what Liz was talking about or examples that she would use. And so thank you for taking this. Our hope is to have something else in the rotation of the Journey class to focus on queer inclusion. So keep that at the back of your mind. The other thing I wanted to mention, I think we're going to put out some kind of survey to everybody who was part of the class at some point, because, there were some people who weren't able to actually be at the class, whether because, it's held at the 11 o'clock service time and people didn't want to miss worship, or for any other reason, but they want to read the book, they want to do something like that. We're talking about putting a survey to see who would be interested in doing that, and maybe who would be interested in possibly leading like a book group. So someone who, not necessarily like what I and the pastors did, it doesn't have to be that formal, but just saying, hey, we're going to get together in person or on Zoom sometime during the week for 5 weeks, and we're going to read this book together. Put a survey out to see who would be interested in that. I told the staff, like, I'd be willing, I wouldn't be able to lead it and the pastors wouldn't be able to lead it, but I'd be willing to train someone and guide someone as how to be a leader for that particular book study. So I think we're going to put together some kind of survey, just how the class was, if that seems like if you guys would all be willing to take it. Anybody on Zoom would be willing to take it, just to give us some feedback and would help us for the future.
Chris, there's if you go on YouTube, on your computer, and you put Queer Virtue in, you can see all the sessions, like all the,
The videos.
the videos that
Yeah.
she does. And she also has there's a night with Reverend Liz, and she's talking via Zoom to a church community.
Okay.
And I think the church community is more, queer folk and just her discussion with talking to, her peers like that. And they have questions for her. So I think it's over an hour, but that's something to, just to kind of maybe help us wrap up on this with.
I like that. I always like being able to see like,
And it's right there. As soon as you go on, you just put, it's
Yeah.
shit. It's night with Liz.
yeah, I like that being able to kind of expand on maybe some of the things, the questions that we have.
Because, as we're saying, like, we like to ask for this.
Right.
And then they're asking her, well, what do you think? So.
Right. Well, good. Well, let me close in a word of prayer, and then we'll release you all. So, Holy God, we thank you for these past 5 weeks of learning what Reverend Liz has to say, of growing deeper and finding our faith and our understanding of queer virtue, our understanding of our Christian faith, our understanding of what it means to follow Jesus expanded and growing and challenged and wrestled with. As we go from here, may we take everything that we've encountered, everything we've heard, conversed about, and internalize it in some way. That we would not shy away from rupturing boundaries, but that we would seek your kingdom, your beloved community here in our community and around the world. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
It's been really nice being with
Great job.
Yeah, it's been
Great
really
job.
great having everybody here.
Great job.